Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're great. So nice to meet everyone. My name is Kate Van Steenhouse. I'm the Assistant Director for the Kansas Arts Commission. Honored to be a colleague of the ever fabulous Sarah Bloom and really excited to connect with all of you and this program. I'm really excited about everything that KCE is all about. So thanks for joining today. Um, Sarah, you can
Yeah.
move through. We
Woo.
hopefully won't be clunky with our tech. But Sarah's going to click through the slides while I am doing most of the talking. So bear with us if we do get a little tripped up. Um, so for today, standard Zoom housekeeping, just to stay muted if you're not speaking, but also please, if you have a question or you just have a thought you want to share, please chime in. This will be fairly interactive, and we are going to model a few different kind of exercises that you can do with members of your community and also within kind of working groups in your community. So we will be pretty active. Um, we'll also, as I said before, utilize the chat quite a bit. So if you are comfortable and you like doing that, feel free. It's a great place to drop ideas and kind of have side conversations while we are presenting. So we have a lot to get through, and I'm super excited to share this information with you. Like I said, we'll start with introductions. We're going to talk briefly about kind of big picture, what is placemaking, how do we define it? And then we'll talk more in depth about kind of where is everyone starting in terms of thinking about how we want to work for our communities and make our communities better places to be. And then we'll talk much more in depth about where we want to go and what does that mean and how do we get there. So let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so placemaking as a process of activating and creating quality places, right? This is where we want to make the kind of places where people want to be. Um, I really like to use this elements of a healthy community wheel because I think it really shows all the different facets of community. And obviously, this is not a new idea, but I like to really think of it as all these overlapping parts. And for me, obviously, I'm biased being with the Arts Commission, but I really think that arts and culture are kind of the connective tissue and the backbone of all these other aspects. You can go to the next slide. So these are the words in this definition that I really want to highlight, that it's all about activating people who want to be in a place and really strengthening those connections. I mean, at when we talk about and think about placemaking, that is the bottom line. And we'll get into that a lot more. But placemaking at its core is about celebrating the fact that the people who are in community know the best about their own community.
It also goes so much further than just the look of a place. It's the feeling when you walk into it, it's the history behind it. It's making things not only more beautiful, but safer, more attractive, but also um, easier to function, more functional. So it goes way beyond, just putting paint on a wall, way beyond a mural, way beyond a couple of benches. It's how you feel when you walk into that space.
Yes. 100%. We will definitely get into that quite a bit more. Before we do, though, just a little bit of background. So I mentioned I'm with the Arts Commission, and so we are a part of the Department of Commerce. We are the official state arts agency for Kansas, and this is what we're all about, really, promoting, supporting, expanding the creative industries and enriching communities through arts and culture. Like I said, I really believe that culture is the foundation of why we choose to live where we live, invest invest our time and our resources in a place and in the people who make that community. So that's what the Kansas Arts Commission is all about. We do have grants open right now, and I'll share some details about that towards the end.
Yeah, and then the Quality Places division, our kind of tagline is creating communities where residents and businesses can succeed. We are supporting economic growth through strategic investments, grants, hands-on assistance for local projects. We cover the entire state. Our division focuses on everything from childcare and housing and placemaking to broadband expansion to downtown revitalization to rural communities, you name it. We are probably involved in it. So we are very intentional about getting into your communities, about brainstorming with you, about looking to the future with you, and then connecting you to the opportunities to bring your communities forward. So the Kansas Community Empowerment Program lives within the Quality Places division, and we think it lives there very intentionally and very well because everything that KCE is trying to do ties directly into creating quality places where people and businesses can thrive.
Fabulous. Okay. So, as an introduction to start, like I said, we're gonna model some things you can do in each of your communities and also just different ways to connect with people. Because if we think about the culture of our communities, that, the people make the culture, finding ways to connect and finding ways to reconnect. Maybe maybe you're like, oh, I've lived here for decades. I know everyone. That's amazing. And also, might be helpful to find ways to kind of reconnect with people in new ways and strengthen the relationships and the bonds that help create the community. So, on that note, we're going to start with this exercise called I Am From. And this is from a publication that I highly recommend. It's this book called Artists Working in Community. And it's from this group, Springboard for the Arts, which is based out of Minnesota. And I use their resources a lot. The link I just put in the chat connects to this toolkit as well as a bunch of other toolkits that they have available for free download. So, this is a snippet of an exercise, and we're going to use this as a way to introduce ourselves to each other and also kind of ground our thinking in the goals of creating culture. So, we're going to take a couple minutes and complete this little, Mad Lib poem, thinking about where we are from, where we are coming from in terms of our personal histories and also where we live now and kind of the communities we're representing in this room. So this is the basic structure. And Sarah, if you want to go to the next one, I'll talk through my example. Okay. So this is my introduction poem. So I am from well-loved oven mitts, from cream of mushroom soup and handfuls of chocolate chips, Nestle chocolate chips. I'm from the big small town of great coffee shops and breweries, invasive swirls of white pear blossoms, potholes, and breathtaking moonrises. And I am from the last stop on the free bus that connects downtown to the neighborhoods. So the idea with this poem is to not just say like, "Hey, I'm Kate, I live in Wichita." It's really about like I am from a really small town in rural Iowa. I'm from the memories of things being cooked and baked and eaten by sticky handfuls and running around outside with my brothers. Um, that's the culture, right? That we want to kind of ground our thinking in before we move toward thinking about the future. All right, Sarah, you want to do yours and then we'll.
So instead of just Sarah from Hayes, I am from beer steins and crock pots large enough to be trash cans, from hamburger helper and frosting covered graham crackers. I am from the big little city that is proud, resilient, and German, limestone posts, lots of roundabouts, and the wind carrying the smell of dust and wheat. I am from the friendliest block where you can always find a friend. So I also grew up on a farm, and my favorite thing about the house was we had crock pots everywhere, and one was large enough that we just threw a trash bag in it and used it as a trash can, and it's still there today. And um, anytime mom was out of town, dad broke out just the cheapest tub of frosting, the $1 frosting tubs, and just smothered graham crackers in that, and that was some of our favorite times. So again, as Kate said, we're trying to ground ourselves in in our culture, in our history, in our feelings that make a place special as we move forward to think about what makes our community special.
I have a lot of frosting on graham cracker memories also. Also, clearly, Sarah and I are very food focused, just in general. Okay, so we're gonna take a couple of minutes, um, maybe two. Don't overthink this, right? But take a sec, grab a piece of scratch paper, and just kind of jot down these prompts, an object from your childhood home, maybe a product. Again, Sarah and I both went the food direction, but you don't have to. So for those first two lines, and then I am from, and then something from where you currently are. And so for me, that was thinking about the potholes in Wichita are terrible right now, but also the pear trees are starting to blossom, which is insane. Um, and I am obsessed with the moon, and my kids are always teasing me about it. So those are the sensory things that I think about with living in Wichita. And then you just close it with like one little specific detail. So we'll take like
We're
2 minutes.
yeah, we've got a timer going for the 2 minutes. As soon as those 2 minutes are up, we were going to break you out into breakout rooms so you can share those with a small group.
Okay. So as you're probably still finishing up, that's okay. We're purposely going to move through things quickly today. So you won't have enough time, and that's okay because a lot of these ideas, hopefully you'll revisit. Sarah, if you want to send
Yep,
people, and no
here we go.
problem if you're driving and can't participate, we understand, but thank you for that note. Please drive safely.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and create the rooms. We'll give you about 4 to 5 minutes to share your poems with your groups.
Bonnie, do you see a prompt on your screen to join room one? If you click on that, you'll be chatting with Kelly and Terry. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Mute.
Yeah, Connie, we can't hear you still.
There should be a little microphone button you can click. Hmm.
Let's try this. Did that?
Sorry, we can't hear you.
No, I just clicked the ask to unmute button. Let's see if that works. If we get you unmuted, you can just share with us.
Heck yeah.
Although I know exactly where Connie's from.
You know everybody. Maybe we give them like, did you notice what time we sent them in?
I was just trying to look at that. Give them like 30 more seconds. We got people dropping like flies. We're down to only 10 now. Oh, what's happening? Warning them already.
Participating makes people nervous.
Hmm. All right, I'm gonna message all room about 30 more seconds.
Sounds good.
Bring them back at 28. All rooms, I'm gonna turn it back to you. Here we go. Oh,
Connie, I'm sorry that we can't hear you. I see that you're speaking, but we can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me?
there you are.
Yes.
There. Now I have an echo.
Well, now you'll be able to participate.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
So do I just stay put?
Yeah, we're done with the breakout rooms this time. So if you want to mute again, we'll have another opportunity later.
Okay. I've got a bad.
Yeah, I just
Yeah, I just.
all right. All right, Sarah, you want to go to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, any uh any themes that came from that? Anything you'd like to share, either in the chat or like I said, just unmute and see uh and just share.
So Deanna and I are both from Plainville, and I thought it was really funny that we both mentioned that we are from the flats called Paradise, because Paradise Flats was the original name for Plainville, and we both put that in our poem, which was kind of a funny coincidence.
I love it.
That's awesome. See that also. Hi, Ashley. Nice to see you. Um, that's one of those things like the culture of that common ground. That's great.
She also mentioned the Schwann's man, and I was like, oh yes, I should have put that in mine. Schwann's push pops. That's like the definition of a 90s childhood.
Anyone else want to share any common ground that you found or childhood food memories. Apparently that's the theme of the day.
Hey Kate, this is Kelly. I'm actually in the car driving to Topeka, so I won't be on camera. But one of the things that we talked about was weather that we can all appreciate, and I think I put something like I'm from snow falling one day to sunshine the next.
Fabulous. Yes. Thank you. Okay, well, if anyone else has just little snippets you'd like to share, just feel free to type them into the chat. Um, the full poem that's in this toolkit is bigger and longer, and it's a really lovely exercise. I've used it a lot. Um, and I think it's really helpful to have the opportunity to kind of not just create common ground within the group, but we're going to be talking about what do we want to see in our communities moving forward. And in order to kind of think forward, it's really helpful to just remind ourselves where we've come from. Okay, so the next thing we want to really talk about is where are we starting? Um, we are grounded with memories. We're thinking about our communities. We're thinking about the wind and the place and today here in Wichita, it's very foggy and cold. I missed the lunar eclipse. I'm not happy about that. Um, okay, where are we starting? So, as we have already mentioned, we're obviously starting with place, but people make the place. Um, So we're starting geographically with where we all live, right? That's why you are here. Oh, Sarah, you can go forward. In terms of you're here on behalf of communities that you care about. You're here because you want to invest your time, your energy, your resources into making that place more, whatever that more might mean, right? And so thinking about the people make the culture, culture drives why you're here, why you live where you live, why you care for that place. And to dig a little deeper, if we think about people in place, it comes down to, I mean, there are obviously the physical assets, right? We're thinking about what are the size of the trees or the windbreaks that we need as the weather rolls through, right? What's our physical geography? What about the infrastructure, the buildings, the bridges, the roads? Do we have a pool? Do we have a cool arch that marks downtown, right? There's all these different aspects that make up the physical assets. Then also our communities are all economic communities, right? Like the flow of resources helps define the community's relationship with itself and also with visitors, right? So there's a relationship just of commerce and business and kind of the practical economics of life, right? And then also there's the social and cultural side of a community. And so that's really, as Sarah was saying before, like, what's the feel? Like, what is your community known for? Whether it's origin stories, like Ashley mentioned, with a name, whether it's kind of local lore or silly things that make it home, right? Because home is more than a house or a point on a map, right? The culture is what really matters for how we understand our place. So how these different assets intersect and overlap, that's where we can find opportunities to be catalysts for growth. So again, digging a little deeper. How do we understand place in our own communities? And there's a lot of different ways to kind of think about this and approach this. First is with asking questions, right? Being honest with ourselves, seeing our own communities through fresh eyes. So asking questions and observing. Today, we'll do this kind of as a mental exercise here in this shared virtual room, but definitely encourage you to do more of this in person physically in each of your towns. So observing, taking stock, um, and looking beyond geography, looking beyond the again, the physical aspects are important. They're very important, but also kind of digging in if we're thinking about place in those broader parameters. So really identifying culture. What do we think about that? And then getting to assessing. But I will say there are 6 items on this list, right? And assessing is the very last. And I think as humans, we often jump quickly to like, oh, I like that, I don't like that, oh, that works, that doesn't work. And those assessments are important, but there's a lot of steps that come before that. And if we can take the time to slow down and be thoughtful, especially about a place that you feel fairly familiar and comfortable with, a lot can happen during that assessment process. So
We also want to give a shout out. Like, assessment is sometimes the hardest part of this process because we come in sometimes with those rose-colored glasses. We're very biased for the communities that we live in, and sometimes it's hard for us to do self-assessments because we think our communities are great and maybe there is no room for improvement. If you're on this call, that's probably not you. But as you're looking at working with others within your community, that might be the case for some that are in the room. So if you're finding that it's hard to do a self-assessment, or you have a group that is really struggling to see facts, or see real issues, we encourage you to find those third parties that can come in and help, whether that's Commerce with our strategic plan team, or whether that's K-State with their First Impressions program. And I know many of you being KCE communities have used that tool as well. But assessing can be the most difficult thing when we come in and we aren't ready to really face those hard truths, face those real world problems. So keep in mind that we do have tools and resources out there as well to help with that step.
yes, thank you. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about assets and deficits if we're thinking about assessing our communities and really observing. So, this is, again, a definition from the Artist Working in Community Toolkit, thinking about assets as a useful or valuable thing, person, or quality. So, there's all types of different assets, and I promote that every person in a community is creative and every person in a community has something to contribute. We just have to find what those things are. And often with assets, I also think of assets as opportunities. And I think a lot of times in the physical spaces of our community, there are a lot of opportunities that can be overlooked. And as this definition points out, like vacant lots, parking lots, fences, right? There's a lot of sort of opportunities that can be found in that which is commonly overlooked. So, thinking about assets in a broad way. And then this is the definition of deficit that this toolkit uses. So, framed within a context of want rather than a purely negative term. So, a deficit is where there's a feeling of lack. Maybe there's information you wish you had, maybe there's some infrastructure you wish you had, or you wish there was like a infrastructure that maybe was at a different level of niceness or finish or polish, whatever, right? But there's this feeling of lack and desire. And again, that feeling of desire can help be turned into action. Okay, this next slide talks about this is another activity you can do in community, and it can be short and sweet. But just thinking of taking a tour of your own community and something that you might think you're quite familiar with and comfortable with. Again, we're not going to do this today, but this is just an idea we wanted to share because it's a really great way to get people to see things with fresh eyes and have a chance to slow down and really do that observation piece. For our purposes today, we just want to think, let's take a sec and either unmute and shout out or put in the chat, like, what are some assets and deficits that come to mind when you're thinking about your town, about your community? What are some things you feel like are, I don't even want to say strengths, opportunities?
You can shout it out by unmuting, or you can shout it out in the chat, or we can throw you back in breakout rooms if you feel more comfortable in the smaller groups.
I think one of our assets in Caney is we've got a small pocket park we're working on, and we think it's going to be a great little hub to bring in food trucks and different small events. Our school district has even already asked about utilizing it for their homecoming parade and stuff. So I think, we have a lot of groups looking to utilize that space. So it's a great asset coming down the pipeline for us.
Awesome. And Pocket Park, you said?
Pocket park, correct? Yes.
Awesome. Is it relatively new for the community?
It will be brand new once it's finished up.
Oh, so not even done yet.
Not even done yet.
Fabulous.
Jared, what led to the pocket park? What was the lack that led to needing that? Was it a feeling? Was it a lack of a gathering space in your downtown?
Yeah, specifically a gathering space that where we didn't have to close off the streets for most anything. It was an old burnt down building that had burned down probably 7-8 years ago. And the city owned it. And it was just a space like, okay, what are we going to do with this? So we actually are a Brownsfield community through the EPA. And so when I first moved back in early 2021, we did a whole learning thing with them. And they connected us with an architect group, and they did some renderings for us of our downtown. We had some thoughts and ideas for them, but they did some drawings, and that was one of them. And so we just kind of like, okay, now let's put it into motion.
Awesome.
Connie put in the chat, she's from Lucas. Their art community is their biggest asset. That's a great answer. And that they are looking for some cleanup and work on yards, and housing is a need. Ashley put Rooks County Health Center is an amazing asset in Plainville. A deficit we are working on is the downtown revitalization.
So Ashley, I'm curious, like, what is the lack when you are thinking about downtown revitalization? That makes perfect sense, but also like, what's the lack more specifically that you
There are
revisit?
a lot of vacant buildings in our downtown, which prevents there being enough foot traffic to support the businesses that are there. So we are working on trying to get some of those vacant buildings out of ownership that either isn't interested or can't afford to bring those buildings back into service, and then revitalizing them and trying to fill them with more businesses. Increasing foot traffic is kind of the general answer.
Cool.
Lack of foot traffic would be the,
And
yep.
vacancy. I bet that's a common theme. So far I'm assets that of third spaces, in Caney's case, Pocket Park, but third spaces are often fantastic assets if there's gathering spaces that can be revitalized or kind of reinvented. And then deficits, housing and cleanup, vacancy, and a lack of foot traffic.
Connie put some other great assets in there.
Oh, yeah.
Small businesses, a school, a huge asset that a lot of our communities don't have anymore, and a very progressive city council. I feel like that one needs a snap. Like, to have a city council that is working with each other and working with the citizens and is willing to do creative projects and take on some of these ideas is huge. Sometimes that's a huge barrier for other communities. Terry put Ashland has a great city park that we'd like to develop further.
Fabulous.
Yeah, some great ones.
Yeah, this is great. Okay. Yay. All right, we're going to think more about assets and deficits we'll work with these ideas a little bit later. So before we dive straight into that part, though, I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about futures thinking, which Ashley has joined me as part of this cohort to think about futures work. And so I'm going to take a sec and kind of talk through what that is all about. Because as we think about how we want to revitalize or how we want to build and rebuild, um, for today, we're going to take some time to think about time and think about like, okay, what does that look like? Like if we get if our downtown is revitalized or if the Rooks County Health Center continues to thrive and be an asset in Plainville, like what does that look like in the future, right? So we want to really map out where we are going in terms of where do we want our communities to be. And so I'm going to talk through these ideas rather quickly, and then we'll dig into some more brainstorming. Okay, so this is life, or can be. This is what life has felt like for me personally for a while, right? You're just going with the flow, and like you're taking things as they come, but meanwhile the flow is just batting you around, right? And what happens with that is that while we're going with the flow, it makes it really hard to pick our heads up and see what's coming up ahead, right? So we want to be able to think about the future productively and the future of our communities productively. And that's really hard to do. There are physical obstacles in our heads and in our brains for what makes that hard. Oh, thank you, Sarah. All right, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So, physically, biologically, when we think about our future self, the part of our brain that gets activated when we try to think about ourselves in the future, whether that's honestly 2 weeks from now or 10 years from now, the same part of our brain activates as when we're thinking about complete strangers, right? Like we are not biologically wired to really have like a personal attachment to the future. And there's a lot of reasons for that. This slide just kind of shows a few of those. So it's really easy to get way too focused on the present. We all have to-do lists that are long, schedules that are packed. There's a lot sort of keeping us, like we're just trying to get through the day, right? We're also easily influenced by data and predictions. We we generally speaking have pretty short attention spans and there's a lot happening in the world. And so again, you see that information, it's easy to get distracted. It's also easy to get anxious and just try to avoid like, oh, I can't think about the future. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm not sure. Everything's too uncertain. So it's just too much. The other challenge with that is there are sort of single like ideas about like a default future where something might feel inevitable. You can go to the next one. So this is actually how the future looks, right? Where here is the tip of that cone, and there's so many possibilities for what can happen for our individual lives, for the lives of our communities, all of that. There really are pretty much infinite possibilities. What's plausible is a little bit of a smaller arc. That's understandable. Um, there's many things we can dream of, but what's realistic starts to inch in. What's probable inches in even farther. And then what's projected can often just be kind of this like we're just recreating the wheel, right? The way that our brains work, we base our our knowledge is based on what we have experienced, right? And so if we're trying to think ahead into the future, the only thing we have to go off of is what we know, and what we know is inevitably in the past. So thinking this way hopefully helps kind of break us out of those cycles because our preferred future is probably somewhere in between. But what's probable, what's possible, right? There's ways we can kind of push those boundaries. Okay, next one. Because the thing is, there isn't a default, right? I don't know about all of you. I don't know all of you personally, but I have young teens, and I feel like every show they watch or every book they read has some kind of like post-apocalyptic dystopian future scenario, as if a dystopian future is our default, whether that be because of a zombie apocalypse or whether it be because everything is vacant, empty, dried out, or completely flooded, or covered in trash. I mean, those are not really the ideas of the future that I want to live in. You can go to the next one. This slide gets rather academic, but I love it. So, thinking about how those ideas get normalized, right? What starts out as fringe ideas, like just a few shows on TV or a few movies, right? Science fiction, arts, fringe culture starts way like it's not very many people are plugged in. But then over time, whether it's subcultures that emerge, people start having uh, conferences or getting together in bigger and bigger groups about whether it's just like a science fiction movie that people are super into, or whether that becomes a whole franchise, right? Um, Subcultures grow. Then it catches on in the mainstream media, whether that's TV or now any number of social media feeds. Things that were fringy before now become like, oh, it's like, yeah, of course, everyone's familiar with superheroes. Or my son just went to see is it the fourth Avatar movie? I don't know, but there's an Avatar movie in theaters right now that's all about a future world, right? Where people are blue and live off the land. And like those types of ideas aren't really that strange anymore, right? Then ideas become even more codified in terms of actual power structures in our culture and in our society, and eventually become actual laws, uh, encoded culture in how we live. Okay, next. So the main question here that when I think about like, okay, for our communities, like what ideas do we want to normalize and therefore perpetuated? So when I think about this, again, I grew up in a really small town in Iowa. It's like I think about the stereotypes of what people thought that meant for how I lived my life, right? So this isn't just about pop culture and what's on TV or what we see in the media, right? It's also about like what are the stereotypes or ideas that get normalized about Kansas, about rural community. Um, what are those ideas and what do we not want to perpetuate? Because now next slide. There's also all this really cool stuff happening that I feel like doesn't get as much airtime as some of the more darker dystopian type of stories. So like years ago, the little image about scientists having a conversation with a whale, that was now almost 3 years ago, where scientists worked to decode the sounds that humpback whales make, and they had a conversation back and forth, right? Like that happened 2 or 3 years ago. So if that technology keeps going, like maybe we'll be able to have full-on conversations with animals. Sounds kind of crazy now, but hey, you never know. They're already doing it. In Florida in 2022, wait, go back one real quick. Um, in 2022, a fast food restaurant switched to a 3-day work week to help with employee burnout and retention. So that was already 4 years ago. That Chick-fil-A franchise is thriving, right? Like things like a 5-day work week that are so ingrained as part of our culture, they don't have to be. There's a lot of different ways that we can reimagine our world. Okay, now let's go forward. So this is a really common phrase that comes from a Hawaiian scholar who is also a futurist named Jim Dater. So, any useful statement about the future should at first seem ridiculous. And what we're going to do next is really try to like flex our ridiculous muscles because if our ideas sound conventional and normal and safe, then we're probably not pushing the boundaries far enough, right? And that said, it's pushing boundaries is hard. So we have to just all of us, we have to get more comfortable with seeming ridiculous with our ideas because if we're not dreaming big, then we're probably perpetuating status quo that we may or may not be pleased with, but we want to at the very least be thoughtful about it. So the next idea that we're going to dive into a little bit comes from this book, which is called Imaginable by Jane McGonigal. And in it, she introduces this idea of 10-year time travel. So we want to think ahead 10 years to give ourselves this idea of like time spaciousness, right? So by doing that, there is no status quo. And the biases that seem normal now, like we can get rid of all that. We can kind of suspend what feels ridiculous because we're talking 10 years in the future, right? Think about how ridiculous Star Trek has always seemed. Sorry, I'm a science fantasy person, so like all my examples have to do with sci-fi, admittedly. So we just talked about assets and deficits, thinking about pocket parks, a health center that's doing really well, city parks that are doing really well, progressive city leadership, that's exciting. So if we think about those assets continuing to thrive over the next 10 years, and we think about the things we want, like more housing, general cleanup, we don't want things to be vacant. Let's think about, so what if there were no vacancies, period? What if there was such a demand for downtown real estate that it was really common for businesses to share spaces? Or what if there ended up being kind of like a building boom because vacancy became a thing of the past? Um, what if? What if? All right, let's go to the next slide. We're going to take a sec and play with this idea of what if. Like, what if education was free? What if healthcare was free? We talked about that booming health center. What if a 3-day work week became normalized? And along with Sunday being kind of a day of rest or a day of reverence, what if everyone had like a give back day in the community or a creative day where it was just completely understood like, oh, on Wednesdays, you go make music or cook things or paint things or that was just like a normal cycle and part of life, right? So the question of like, what are we running toward? And the idea of like a finish line, whether that's 10 years from now, 5 years from now, next year, like it's not a line, it's a whole zone of possibilities. So let's think about what do we want our communities to look like? We're going to map that out a little more. But just for right now, we're going to play a little game. Hang on, I got to check my timing. Ah, we're totally on time. Good job, everybody. We're going to play a little game just for a couple of minutes to help think about like, okay, this is the what if, right? What do we want? What culture do we want to nourish now to make a healthier environment? What are we running toward? And if this feels like too big, a, a good way to start is thinking about, okay, 10 years ago, this was true for me or for my community. So 10 years ago here in Wichita, I think we had one brewery and a couple of coffee shops, but not see, it's also all about food. Food and science fiction, people. That's where my head is. Um, so that was 2016, right? So like you can think back to what was true 10 years ago, and then you kind of use that as a way to catapult thinking forward. 10 years ago, I didn't think there was any possibility we'd be in a global pandemic or live through a global pandemic. I don't think I even knew what the word pandemic was. Um, okay, so this is what we're going to play with. We're going to take, and you can, if you are somewhere where you have some scratch paper, you can write this down. But think about what are some completely ridiculous ideas for abundance. I like to think in abundance terms because again, why not, right? If we're dreaming forward, why don't we think about it in terms of things being vastly successful? And just real quick before we let you go, um, from Jane McGonigal's book, some 10-year facts. 10 years from Facebook to go from 1 user to 1 billion daily users, becoming the first product used by more than 1 in 3 humans on the planet between 2004 to 2015. 10 years from Airbnb and Uber being established and being founded as businesses. And then that was in 2008. In 2018, a third of our economy was made up of gig workers. So there's a totally different model, right? That Airbnb and Uber sort of set in motion. 10 years ago, well, this book's kind of old. In 2011 is when Zoom was invented. Here we are on Zoom. And by 2020, it became it became so immersed in our lives because of COVID. I remember being a kid in the 80s and like, would it be amazing if we had video phones like on Scooby-Doo? Now, like, look at us. We use, quote, video phones basically every day. Okay, so we want to play this what if game. And the challenge is to see how ridiculous you can actually be. We're going to put you back in little rooms because it's easier to be ridiculous in smaller groups. And one other thing I want to just throw out there is there's an improv comedy technique called yes and, which maybe you're already familiar with. But the idea is that no idea is a bad idea and no idea can be shot down. So if someone says, 10 years from now, I'll be able to talk to my dog, then you say, yes, and um, pets will start to participate in the economy and help with, um, household income. And then the next person says, yes, and front yards will be all gardens or whatever. The idea is just you just keep building on the ideas. And so it's like an idea hot potato. Sarah, am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so. I'm going to open rooms. There'll be about 4 of you in each room. Have fun, get crazy. We'll be back in about 4 minutes.
How ridiculous can you be? That's the
That is the
challenge.
goal. Hey, Connie got in the room.
Yay. We might have people multitasking and not able to join, but that's okay. Let's bring them back at like 101.
10. Okay. Yep. Sounds good.
That will give them about 5 minutes.
Yep. So at 1, I will hit the button because it gives them 60 seconds to wrap things up.
Perfect. And I'm going to pull up some of the links for the resources so that we have those ready. But I also feel like we might get more use out of that by sending them out after the fact with the recording and follow-up.
I've never recorded a Zoom with breakouts. I don't know if it records just us or if it records the breakouts.
No, I think it records just us. We'll need to do some
Do some
editing.
All right, here we go.
Oh, wow, that was fast.
All right, Kate, you've got everyone back.
Thank you. Okay, how ridiculous did it get? Did anyone I'm like, ooh, I want to make this a competition, but I'm also not very competitive. So just shout it out or put it in the chat. What did you get to an idea that felt on the edges of a comfort zone or outside a comfort zone?
So this might sound a little bit familiar, but in our group chat, we talked about, what if population grew and what if there was enough housing for it to really grow? And then Connie said, and what if everyone participated in the community and volunteered? And that was the most outrageous thing that I felt like I heard, because we know that just doesn't happen, but it would be great if it did.
Love that. Thank you, Ashley.
I think this is Kelly. One thing that we talked about, which piggybacks off Ashley's, which is kind of funny since we both live in the same community, is what if we had volunteers for every single thing that we wanted to do with a wait list?
Love that.
That would be good.
Full sign up, full volunteer sign up sheets with wait lists wanting to help.
And Samantha said in the chat, we would
And
like to, oh, I'm getting an echo. Main Street full of businesses with organized nights to get together frequently, food vendors on every corner. The yard would have events every week and a full list of involved volunteers. So I'm gonna tell a quick story, but please keep sharing in the chat or interrupt me. But one of the things as I was brainstorming with this, one of the prompts was like, what if education was free? And that got me thinking, like, what if education was, what if like for say the traditional 8 hour school day, what if 4 hours of that was like this and run with either statewide or kind of big national cohorts of students that were from all different, maybe even all different age groups, all but and matched by say just like reading levels, right? But it could be people from all over. And what if they had that for, say, an hour, right? And then they had like a math group for an hour, whatever. And then what if for the other 4 hours of their day, students were paired one-on-one with local mentors and they went out and did things in community. So they had, like hands-on learning. Like people wouldn't, I'm not suggesting that like a whole bunch of teachers would lose jobs. I'm saying, what if we streamlined sort of the core learning parts, but then activated even more people from the community to teach a bunch of different other things. Anyway, kind of goes along with this idea of volunteers and like if everyone was contributing, yeah, what would that look like? Which also, real quick, before we move to another thing, reminds me, one of the things that we haven't gone in depth about today, but that is an aspect of community. Oh, actually, I'm going to cut myself off and wait because we're going to talk about this in a second. Any other ridiculousness? All right. I'm going to let you off the hook because it's already 1:05, but I'm
Yes.
hoping to hear more ridiculousness. Please share it in the chat. Um,
But ridiculous or not, you can't do any of these ideas without a community of people to support you, right? We all need a group of people that are sharing these visions, sharing these goals, sharing these aspirations. And so we're going to look next at community as a team and who are you bringing to the table? We know that we need a support system, but how do we build that support system? So everyone, we're going to consider in this scenario, everyone's a genius. We want to think about what role the community members that are on your team play, and everyone does have a role. Whether there is someone there that is a good brainstormer, that's my strong suit. I tell everyone brainstorming is my happy place. I want to come in and dream big and think of the ridiculous ideas. I want to invent. I want to be creative. But then you also need the people on your team that are going to say, you know what, Sarah, that's a little too ridiculous. They're going to pull you back and make sure that what you are dreaming up is feasible. Then you're going to have the people that are the movement, the support, the impact, and the results, the ones that just want to be told what we're doing, how we're doing it, and be told to just go and implement and do and create. So who are the people in your community? What are their genius roles? And how can you utilize them? Some ways to identify stakeholders in your community are through these questions. Who is going to benefit from the project? Are they at the table? Who is going to potentially object or be negatively impacted by the project? Are they at the table? Even if they're going to object, they should be at the table. You need contrasting ideas in order to vet things out and to make sure that they're going to be beneficial for the mass. Who has the power and the authority to make decisions regarding aspects of your project, whether that's the city or the county or the landowner or the building owner? Who has to grant their permission? Again, is it the government? Is it the property owner? Is it a certain activist group within your community? And who's doing similar work? Are you duplicating efforts? Is there someone that's already doing similar work that can come alongside you and move the project forward faster? Start making those lists right off the bat when you're starting a project. Who are the people that can best fit all of these roles? Kate, did you want to take this one?
Sure. Thank you. So we started talking about people in place. Those are sort of the primary pillars for thinking about placemaking efforts. Intentions, actions, and ripple effects are really the other three pillars that surround people in place, right? So thinking about intentions, intentions need to be discussed openly with everyone in community, everyone we're working with, right? And approached with as many people as possible in community. Was just putting in the chat like the different community engagement techniques that we've either introduced or practiced today. So we'll follow up on that. So we're going to talk, I'm going to move through these actions. Like that's what, in some ways, that's what we're all here for, right? Like, what do we want to do? What do we want to create or set in motion in our communities to help that action get started? And then the ripple effects. Ripple effects are an amazing thing when people get activated and start to see the change happening, just like you all already mentioned, the pocket park being built, the health centers thriving, right? Like those wins have ripple effects that continue. And if those ripples are then nurtured, they create even more ripples. So if we're thinking about this vision, we've kind of brainstormed for our communities 10 years from now. So like if you're thinking of like, okay, 10 years from now, my community will be boom. There will be they'll have so much engagement, there's no volunteer opportunities available. So in order to make that a reality, what are the intentions that we need to approach that with? This is also thinking about intentions. I like to work from a place of assuming best intentions from people who want to be involved and thinking about how can we identify commonalities. And also being really self-aware about our own intentions and especially when you are, again, because you're here on this training over your lunch hour, I'm guessing you are pretty active in your community and you are a doer, right? So then being sort of thoughtful and self-reflective about, well, what are my intentions with trying to organize, or what do I have any baggage I'm bringing into this meeting? And again, looking for common ground. Sarah, go ahead. So moving forward, there will be a lot of chances to talk more about specific projects within this group. And I know there's grant funding and there's a lot of things that Sarah's working with you all on. I want to talk about just kind of four bigger ideas before we move forward. So, we've come up with this ridiculous vision for the future, or we've set seeds for that in motion. So thinking about, okay, like, well, what is the opportunity, right? Like, what's the thing we want to address? What's the problem we want to address? What's the challenge? We want more volunteers. Maybe that's it. What are the goals for the community, and what do we hope to achieve? Obviously, it's important to have goals. And again, the more we can co-create those goals with our fellow community members, the better. And moving on, who in the community will you work with? This is where that working geniuses that Sarah just talked through is really useful, right? Like, who are the who are the participants? Who are the audience? Who are your co-builders? How will all of those different groups benefit? And thinking about this idea of stakeholders, what does that mean? What does it look like? What does each group or person bring to the table? And also, what is the overall context? So, how, if there's a project, um, we were in a meeting earlier where there was talk of park benches, city benches that are fully wired for Wi-Fi hotspots. So thinking about like, okay, if we know we want to create a downtown where there are no vacancies and where we have lots of people who are engaged, the context of our work might be making downtown more comfortable and making downtown a place where people want to be. So thinking about like, okay, if that's our goal, and we're going to think about the different community members that we can engage for that, and like the kind of different points of view and perspectives that those people can bring to the table. Then also, how does this project relate to the community plans and work that those other groups, those other people are already doing? And thinking about, does this project fill gaps and create new connections? So if our project is to get these Wi-Fi benches all up and down Main Street and turn our outdoor spaces into Wi-Fi hotspot hubs so people can work and game and be out in the world in new ways, what new connections would that create? Are there current gaps that idea would be filling? Um, Real quick before we're fine to stay on this slide, but one thing I wanted to say earlier, but I wanted to wait until we had a chance to talk about intentions and actions, is something that I talk about a lot with public art groups that we work with or arts organizations that we work with is the idea of belonging and creating belonging. And through our research, we have found that a really great recipe for creating belonging is comfort, connection, and contribution. So if you have those three C's happening in your community, that means people feel a real sense of belonging. So comfort is sort of the basics, right? Um, is our downtown, I'm just using downtown as an example, is our downtown a physically comfortable place to be? We need those benches, right? Because people want to sit. And it's Kansas, so let's put some shade structures over them, right? We need that. So basic comfort. Then connection. I'm using this Wi-Fi bench example, which is a very literal way to connect, but connection between people, connection between different parts of our lives, right? If we get these benches and they're shaded, people have a place to sit. Oh, guess what? We should have plugs. We should maybe have water stations as part of them, right? Like we're creating comfort, but then while you're creating that comfort, the connections happen because now people are sitting, people are chatting, people are saying, like, you know what? I can take my kid to the park for an hour and do this meeting at the same time because I'll be able to sit on that bench and do my meeting from the bench. And while I'm there, I'm going to chit chat with maybe another working parent who's doing the exact same thing. Now we've created connection. And then the final step for that belonging recipe is contribution, right? We've got those things, and then people say, you know what? I actually love to quilt sun sails and create multicolored shade structures that I would be happy to donate those to the town and we can have more shade structures so that more people can fit under on this hot day and we can hang out, right? Like there's people will think of opportunities to contribute when they feel that sense of belonging. Okay. Whew. We were hoping to get to this resources and opportunities slide, which is really our last slide, by 117. So we're ahead of schedule, which is fantastic. We wanted to just give you a few examples, but we're also going to follow up with more examples via email after this. Just communities who are, sorry, I'm opening links. Wanted to
I was
leave
gonna
you
say,
with some
do you
practical.
want me to stop sharing so you can share?
Yes, thank you. Practical things so that as you are working on and thinking about, like, okay, hopefully we've gotten some ideas flowing. That's really great. But now, like, what are we gonna do? Um, Really quick, are you seeing my?
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. The little, hang on. There we go, that's better. Okay, so super practical is the Arts Commission grants are open as of right now, as of early last week. Um, so there are numerous grant opportunities available. Arts Everywhere program is project-based. General operating support is operations-based. Public art and murals for any kind of public impact type work you might want to have. There's a lot of information on our site, which I'll put in the chat. KansasArtsCommission.com is the shortest version of how to get to this information. We have funding minimums between $1,000 to $20,000 for a whole range of projects. So those are open now. Grants are due March 23rd. And then actually after that, we have a brand new grant that we haven't even talked about publicly, but I'm going to go ahead and just talk about it. It's Micro Arts Projects Grant, which are going to be really small grants, like $1,000 to $2,000, and they're meant to be you apply, we get the money out the door quickly, you do a project, and those are specifically for organizations with really small budgets, meant to be very kind of introductory and easy. So there's a lot here. But I also want to talk about some community examples. So this is a program that Sarah and I did, oh my gosh, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. And the idea was it was called Engaging Placemaking for Innovative Communities. And we worked with, sorry, there we go. We worked with 5 different communities across central Kansas, and they did a series of community engagement efforts and then public art interventions to create more belonging in their community. So in Hutchinson, for example, they wanted to develop um, a piece of private property that is right in downtown, and they wanted to make it more like a public park. And so they created a whole series of interventions throughout the summer and fall to get people hosting yoga classes there, bringing food trucks there, having these kind of like community creative days, all kinds of different engagements that were scheduled weekdays at lunch every Saturday to try to get people experiencing their downtown in Hutchinson in a slightly different way. In Kingman County, we did a project. Sarah and I and the commerce team, we were there as coaches and as technical support just to really help. The communities spearheaded these projects. The idea in Kingman was Plains on the Plains, and they worked with this local artist, Robert Shea, and worked to really dig into the history of Robert Cessna, right? Am I saying that right? Clyde Cessna, sorry. Who is from Kingman and grew up there, and thinking about like, okay, our community has this history with Cessna and with flight and with airlines, and really wanting to think about how can we take that history, that culture, and really just make it grow. And so they did a series of these public sculptures, and also have purchased, the city of Kingman purchased what was not abandoned, but a non-working gas station right in a main corner of town. Now that will be a visitor center and a Cessna museum that is currently being developed. In addition to these sculptures being built, spearheaded by this one artist, but built with a lot of community input in Cunningham, Norwich, and Kingman. So also connecting the 3 largest communities in that county. Lindsborg did a series of arts interventions that happened in conjunction with the gallery in their community, again, trying to really foster the arts community that already exists there. Rice County wanted to connect through their project was called Pieces of Rice County, and they wanted to connect the six, Sarah, help. Thank you. 6 different commute towns in Rice County. They worked 8. That's what I thought. Yeah, 6 is not nearly enough. So they worked in each of these communities. There was a local advisory committee in each town, and they worked with a team of artists who helped design murals that were painted in each community, but also there was this central design with the puzzle piece that they are putting on, like they're making puzzles, t-shirts, they're making all kinds of merchandise to really talk about unifying Rice County and create some visual branding, but also kind of a tourism opportunity, whether that is internal tourism or external tourism. Stafford County put up a new gazebo in St. John and also worked to develop a new pocket park in Stafford. And so they worked with a local artist who is a metal artist. You can see one of the designs here in the corner. He does plasma cutout not carvings, but cutouts and silhouette work out of metal. And so he works with these massive saw blades and then creates nature scenes from them. So you can see the pocket park was still very much in progress when these photos were taken, but they created these kind of welcome gates and they created these different pieces with metalwork that kind of loosely refers to the Quivira Wildlife Preserve that is part of their geography, right? But the people and the place of Stafford as a town really wanted this pocket park and needed a place for people to gather. So those were some of the projects that were made with our EPIC program. I wanted to highlight Volland and the Volland store, if any of you have had the opportunity to go. Volland is northern central Kansas. That's how I think of it, with the map in my mind. Which may or may not be incredibly accurate, but near Alma. And Volland is it's really an intersection. And this mercantile, which is now over 100 years old, but is now also an art gallery and a residency. And they have exhibition space. They do theater. There's some ruins in the yard outside of the store, and so the store houses the art gallery, and also there's an Airbnb and some other places to stay. And then they host events and theater productions in this ruin area, which is just outside, which is very cool. One thing I wanted to mention, this just along the lines of connecting, we'll also share this link as a follow-up, but the Connecting Entrepreneurial Communities Conference was new last year in Kingman, and this coming year it'll be in Cortland. So thinking about ways to encourage entrepreneurship in your community and whatever that might mean for your community. It doesn't just mean businesses. There's a lot of other ways that this conference and the people attending sort of approach a really expansive definition of entrepreneurship. And then I'm going to show you a couple of, so this is an example in Green River, Utah, where they have worked, Epicenter is actually a local art center, but they've worked to do all kinds of different projects, housing. They did a housing assessment. They've done different kind of development for building new homes, all kinds of things. And this is really a story of people digging in and getting involved in local place. there's another art center. Oh, I'm getting too long-winded. There's another art center in um, rural California that has a whole product sharing entrepreneurship space where they've developed, and they have local honey and they have a brewery, and they've really leaned into promoting products out into the world. Whew, sorry. It's 1:27. Sarah, you want to throw up that contact slide and then
Yes.
this is thank you so much for being here. I know this is a lot of information, and we will package it and share it back out with everyone.
Yeah, it's easy to get long-winded talking about resources and projects because
Yes.
we have had our fingers in a lot of different projects. There's a lot that inspires us. I know Kate, anytime I hear her speak, inspires me. So I'm very, again, honored that she was able to join today and do the brunt of this. So you didn't have to hear me cough the whole time because the more I talk, the more I cough. But I know we're at 1:30. Are there any questions or ideas or thoughts that anyone in the group would like to share before we wrap today? Anything that you're excited about in your community, anything you'd like to share? I want to leave you with just, please reach out if you have projects in your communities, if you need someone to brainstorm, if you need someone to strategic plan with, if you need to know what grants are available. We are happy to assist with that. We have amazing team at Commerce that can help with any and all of that. We will respond as quickly as we can and provide whatever services and resources we can as well. And even, like I said, if you just need ideas, if you're working on a pocket park, Kate just gave you a great example of a pocket park that we played a role in. So whatever it looks like, however we can reach out, it's not just Kate and I, it's not just Quality Places, it's not just the Arts Commission. When you are connected to commerce, you're connected to rural prosperity, you're connected to tourism, you're connected to the business, the small business department. So whatever we can help with, we just want to leave you with that last thought. But again, I'm gonna stop talking. Any questions, thoughts, ideas, takeaways that anyone would like to share, you can do that in the chat or unmute.
All right, well, it's been a pleasure.
Has I know Kate mentioned her grants. Don't forget the Kansas Community Empowerment grants are open right now as well. If you're looking at the smaller grants, those Kickstart grants, those are rolling round. They will be looked at every 15th of the month. So if you have a project you're already working on, you want to get funding for it quickly, make sure that that application is turned in by the 15th of this month. If you're looking at the impact grants, those will close at the very end of this month, and then you'll be awarded in April or May. So again, reach out if you have any questions, if we can help brainstorm, if we can provide resources. We would love to be a part of whatever you're working on. Thank you again for joining. We will make sure that these slides and this recording are available online soon, along with all of those many, many resources that Kate shared, plus probably a little extra because that's just how we roll. But thank you again for joining, and we're going to go ahead and shut down the recording. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.